Welcome to World on Wheels, the ultimate channel for Formula One enthusiasts. Here, you'll find everything about the races, the latest news on drivers, teams, and much more. If you're looking for in-depth analysis, behind-the-scenes content, and all things F1, make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you never miss a video. Let's accelerate together. Join our F1 fan community today. Understand the qualities that make Antonelli special for Mercedes. Mercedes driver development advisor reveals the key characteristics that make the Italian stand out from the rest. The youngest of the rookie class in Formula One, Andrea Kimi Antonelli, is facing the difficult task of replacing Lewis Hamilton at Mercedes. However, the team is confident that some of the attributes that made him excel in karting will help him adapt smoothly to the seat. Born in 2006, the year Fernando Alonso won his second F1 title, Antonelli will be the youngest driver on the F1 grid in 2025, who said to motorsport.com. But at that time, my thought was, okay, he's the best I can have in karting, without even thinking about Formula One. Later, when we did the first single-seater test, the way he adapted swiftly to almost every situation made you start to realize that you had someone very special. Of course, that doesn't mean he is everything. There's still a lot of work to do to help him grow, guide him, and also let him make mistakes. That's just part of the learning process. And then for me, Formula Regional has developed very well in recent years in terms of preparing drivers, and we've seen over the years that the kids who came from it, or before, when it was called Formula Renault Euro Cup, into F3 or F2 performed well, and most of the time were the ones winning. So, when Kimi performed well in Freaka, I wasn't convinced that moving to F3 would develop him further, and I also wanted to put him in a situation where he would face more challenges. Sending him to F2, of course, required some preparation, earning a sprint race win and a feature race victory before withdrawing from the season finale in Abu Dhabi due to illness. According to La Grue, Antonelli's F2 season, which yielded just one additional podium, actually helped develop an aspect of his skill set that hadn't been tested much before, something that will benefit him greatly in F1. I would say that, normally, there's a certain consistency in terms of the teams leading F2. So we know that Prema, Art, Carlin, or a few others are the teams you need to work with if you want to succeed in F2, La Grue explained. But the new F2 brought new challenges, and we saw that the top teams weren't adapting as well. Prema was performing well and had the best engineers. We placed Kimi there thinking we were putting him in a very strong environment that would normally deliver good results. But it seems we faced some difficulties. But in a way, that was also very interesting because the fact that Kimi was dealing with these challenges allowed us to discover a part of him we had never seen before. We had to help him handle difficult weekends. The two after just 1 year in Formula Regional shows Mercedes' confidence in his capabilities and their belief that he can rise to the occasion. However, the move to F2 was not without its challenges. Despite the high expectations, Antonelli faced a steep learning curve, especially given the changes in the F2 car and the struggles of his Prema team. Despite a season full of adversity, including dealing with the pressure of not always winning, Antonelli showed growth. His maturity and leadership, even in difficult circumstances, were commendable and revealed a side of him that hadn't been tested before. This is critical for his transition to F1, where the competition and pressures will be even greater. That said, the question remains whether Antonelli will be able to perform at the level Mercedes expects from him in F1. His impressive adaptability will certainly be an asset, but the real challenge lies in managing the steep step. Lewis Hamilton crashed on the second day of testing a 2023 Ferrari Formula One car at the Circuit de Catalunya in Barcelona on Wednesday, 29. The seven-time world champion, who had his first test with his new team at the Fiorano track last week and is still adapting to the new environment after leaving Mercedes, emerged unscathed. Hamilton, 40, has been completing laps behind closed doors alongside his teammate Charles Leclerc under regulations that allow a limited amount of track mileage in older F1 cars. The Italian website motorsport.com reported that Hamilton hit the barriers at the end of the lap, damaging the suspension and bodywork. This is certainly not the ideal start for Lewis Hamilton at Ferrari, but crashes during testing are not uncommon, especially when a driver is still adjusting to a new car and team. The important thing is that he came out unharmed. This incident also highlights a crucial factor. Hamilton's transition to Ferrari will not be instantaneous. Despite his vast experience, every car has its own dynamics, and the SF23 certainly behaves differently from the Mercedes cars he drove for over a decade. Additionally, Ferrari is focusing on fine-tuning details, such as tire degradation and race starts, which may have led Hamilton to push beyond the limit during testing. The impact of this crash on the team's preparations will depend on the time required to repair the car and the number of lost laps. For Hamilton, this could be a psychological setback or just a minor obstacle in the adaptation process. But one thing is certain, the pressure on him and Ferrari will only increase. The future of the sport is about to change radically, and today we're going to dive into the transformations that are to come in 2026. With new technical and engine regulations, next season promises to redefine the grid hierarchy and bring unprecedented challenges for teams and drivers. Adrian Newey, one of F1's greatest geniuses, has already warned, engines could be the decisive factor in this new era. But what does this mean for the sport? What risks and opportunities do these changes bring? And how might they impact the spectacle we love so much? We'll explore all this and much more in this video. Newey says engines could define F1 2026. Big chance. Next season will feature new technical and power unit regulations. Legendary designer believes one manufacturer could get well ahead of the others. The 2026 season will be the first with changes to both the technical and engine regulations, and there is a big chance that the latter could be crucial in the championship battle. That's the opinion of Adrian Newey, a highly influential designer with 13 Constructors' Championships to his name, including all 6 in Red Bull Racing's history. Recently signed by Aston Martin, the Englishman spoke about the new rules and believes the power units will add a new dimension to the championship fight. There's a big chance it could be a power unit formula at the start. I can't recall another time in Formula One when both the chassis and engine regulations changed simultaneously, and in this case, the chassis regulations were written to, let's say, try to compensate for the power unit regulations. It's an extra dimension, said Newey in an interview with Auto Sport UND Motor. One of the examples Newey cited during the interview was Mercedes. Previously a midfield team, Mercedes became a powerhouse in 2014 when new engine regulations were introduced. At the time, in addition to the combustion engine, cars gained an energy recovery system consisting of 2 motors and a battery. The German team was the one that best capitalized on the changes and, as a result, won 8 consecutive Constructors' Championships between 2014 and 2021. Newey, who will begin working with Aston Martin on March 1st, admitted he is not yet fully up to speed with all the details of the 2026 regulations, but stated that if a team optimizes performance related to combustion engines, they could gain a significant advantage for a long time. There's a chance that one manufacturer could get well ahead, and it becomes a power unit-dominated regulation, at least at the start. There's a possibility that if it's on the combustion engine side, someone could create a dominant engine for the entire duration of this formula because the way the regulations are written, it's very difficult for those behind to catch up, he added. The changes to the 2026 engine regulations include technical, sporting, and financial rules, and were developed with the goal of increasing sustainability and attracting more manufacturers. The power units will have performance similar to the current ones, with high-revving, high-power internal combustion V6 engines, avoiding excessive performance differentiation to improve racing conditions. Meanwhile, the technical regulations bring many changes. The most significant is the removal of DRS, drag reduction system. In its place, a manual overtake mode will be introduced, similar to systems used in categories like IndyCar, Formula E, and Stock Car Brazil. With this, Drivers will be able to press a button to increase the car's power. The expectation is that drivers will gain more autonomy in managing the car, which will feature movable front wings, in addition to the rear wing, although the movable wing system will be discontinued. The front wings will consist of 2 flaps and will be narrower than the current ones. The rear wings will have 3 elements and will be simplified. Due to the changes announced for 2026, some brands outside the current grid have already announced their entry into the sport. The most impactful announcement came from GM/Cadillac, which will become the 11th team in F1 as early as next year. In addition to the American team, Sauber is undergoing a transition and will be renamed Audi. Next year, the German manufacturer will produce its own engine. Ford is also returning to the elite of European motorsport and will supply power units to Red Bull Racing and RB. Analysis: the 2026 changes and the impact of engines on the future of F1. The 2026 season promises to be a milestone in Formula One history, with radical changes to both technical regulations and power units. The opinion of Adrian Newey, one of the greatest designers in the category, reinforces the idea that engines will be the decisive factor in the championship battle at the start of this new era. His analysis not only highlights the complexity of the changes, but also points to the potential dominance of a team or manufacturer, something we've already seen with Mercedes in 2014. The risk of a power unit formula. Newey emphasized that there is a big chance F1 could become a power unit formula at the start of the 2026 cycle. This is because, for the first time, changes to both chassis and engine regulations are being implemented simultaneously, with the former being adjusted to compensate for the latter. This interdependence adds an extra layer of complexity, where engine performance could become the absolute differentiator. The 2014 experience, when Mercedes dominated the category after the introduction of hybrid V6 engines, serves as a warning. The German team not only understood the new rules better, but also developed a superior power unit, which resulted in 8 consecutive Constructors' Championships. Newey suggests that if a manufacturer gets the combination of the combustion engine and energy recovery systems right, they could establish an advantage that will be hard to overcome. Sustainability and competitive balance. The new rules for 2026 aim to increase sustainability and attract more manufacturers, such as GM/Cadillac, Audi, and Ford. However, the challenge will be maintaining competitive balance. The FIA and Liberty Media are working to prevent a team from dominating overwhelmingly, as happened with Mercedes in the past. The decision to maintain high-power V6 engines while focusing on reducing performance gaps between units is a step in that direction. However, Newey warns that if a team manages to optimize the combustion engine under the new rules, they could create a lasting advantage. This is because the current rules make it difficult for those behind to catch up, especially in a scenario where engine development is extremely expensive and complex. Technical changes, more autonomy for drivers. In addition to engine changes, the 2026 technical regulations bring significant innovations. The removal of DRS and the introduction of a manual overtake mode promise to give drivers more control, potentially making races more strategic and unpredictable. The new movable front wings and simplified rear wings should also alter car aerodynamics, possibly improving the ability to follow other cars and facilitating overtaking. These changes are welcome, especially after recent criticism about the difficulty of overtaking on some circuits. However, the success of these innovations will depend on how well teams can integrate them with the new engines and energy systems. Conclusion: a new era of uncertainties and opportunities. The 2026 season represents a new chapter in Formula One, with changes that could redefine the grid hierarchy. Newey's view on the potential dominance of a manufacturer is a warning for the FIA and teams who will need to work to ensure competitiveness is maintained. On the other hand, the arrival of new brands like Audi, Cadillac, and Ford brings a breath of fresh air to the category, increasing interest from fans and sponsors. If the changes are well implemented, F1 could become more sustainable, balanced, and exciting. However, the risk of a team or manufacturer dominating the scene in the early years is real, and this could be both a challenge and an opportunity for the evolution of the sport. In summary, 2026 promises to be a year of revolutions, where engineering, strategy, and innovation will be tested like never before. And, as Newey rightly pointed out, engines will be the heart of this new era. Ferrari warns of a possible change in its car for 2025 that could change everything. Andrew Newey breaks his silence and attacks Red Bull on everything that happened before his departure. Mercedes' Antonelli undergoes assessment to see if he can drive. You can find these and other news items here on World on Wheels. Subscribe to this channel if you like Formula One. That way you can support our work. Let's get to the news. Red Bull began 2024 with some background noise and unstable situations. Christian Horner's position as team principal was under threat, and several members announced they were leaving the Austrian garage. One of the biggest names to leave the stable was Adrian Newey. The British engineer, a veteran with the team, announced his departure during the Miami GP. In an interview with Automotor UND Sport, he detailed why he left the project. If you had told me 12 months ago that I would leave Red Bull to start somewhere else, basically from scratch, I would have said you were crazy, began the designer. But for several reasons, I felt that if I stayed, I wouldn't be true to myself. So, the first difficult decision was whether to stay with Red Bull or stay true to myself. I came to the conclusion to leave. His new employer was announced a few months later, Aston Martin. Newey was quickly linked to the Silverstone-based team, but Ferrari, Williams, and Alpine were also reportedly trying to hire him. Even retirement was considered. I started talking to my wife Mandy about various things. Of course, I'm in the privileged position of not needing to work for money anymore. So I could be lying on a beach somewhere, but I could also be working on the America's Cup or with a car manufacturer on road cars, Newey explained. But I could also continue in racing. If I did, I wouldn't know why I wouldn't stay in F1, assuming people wanted me. As mentioned, there was no shortage of interest. At that point, choosing to stay in F1 was an easy decision for Newey. I've wanted to be a designer in motorsport since I was 10 years old. I've been lucky enough to do that, and I've only disliked it for a few days. Overall, I've enjoyed every day of work, said the engineer. You're awake for about 16 hours a day, and then spend between 8 and 10 hours working. When you're awake, you're working for most of the day. So, I'm incredibly lucky to do something I love. So, I also came to the conclusion that I wanted to keep working, and that I'd get bored if I didn't do anything. And if I'm going to keep working, why not do it in the profession I've always wanted and always enjoyed? And Ferrari? Starting Tuesday, 28, Ferrari will be on the Barcelona track with the SF23 for another 3 days of TPC, test of previous cars, where Lewis Hamilton and Charles Leclerc will continue their training before the 2025 F1 season. The FIA regulations approved this year limit testing with previous cars to 4 days, with a maximum mileage of 1,000 kilometers per driver. Lewis only used 89 kilometers on his debut day in the red car, and Leclerc used 42 due to heavy rain on the Fiorano track. In Catalonia, the weather conditions are much more favorable, so both drivers will have the chance to familiarize themselves with the car before the SF25 debut, scheduled for February 19th in Fiorano after a streamed presentation without media attendance. The SF23, of course, should be old with the developments used at the end of the 2023 season, but both Hamilton and Leclerc will assess what we think has been dubbed the Sarah effect. The work of the two drivers will focus on two particular elements: tire wear, which was one of the Achilles heels of the cars 2 years ago, and starts. Technical director Loic Serra, who was immediately welcomed by the team in Maranello, brought his great knowledge of tires, making the trip to Montmello very useful for developing tire strategies that will also be useful for the SF25. Of course, the tires used won't be the ones for 2025, less sensitive to overheating, as specific tires will be used for these events. Ferrari, however, will assess with both drivers how tire behavior changes based on strategies during the preparation lap, depending on temperature and pressure, and then evaluate how it changes during a stint. Another area of attention is the start. Ferrari engineers believe there is still room for improvement not only in the clutch release maneuver, but also in general acceleration after the lights go out. Electronics experts are continuing to refine start strategies. The clutch must be manually managed by the driver, but how the power is delivered to avoid grip loss can result from perfect power delivery from the thermal engine and the combined action of the hybrid system, which only activates above 100 kilometers per hour. The Scuderia is preparing to focus on details that can make a difference in a season where the red car aims to be competitive in the battle for both drivers and constructors' championships. And Red Bull? Yuki Tsunoda is set to take on a dual role in the 2025 F1 season. In addition to being one of the Racing Bull's main drivers, the Japanese driver is also expected to take on the role of Red Bull's reserve driver, as reported by Motorsport.com. The 24-year-old Japanese driver will compete in his fifth F1 season in 2025, all with Racing Bull's, formerly AlphaTauri and RB, Red Bull's junior team, where he lost the battle for the seat next to Max Verstappen to his former teammate Liam Lawson. Tsunoda had one of his best years in 2024, consistently scoring points and outperforming his teammates, Daniel Ricciardo and Lawson, positioning himself as a contender for the second Red Bull seat, which was vacated by the fired Sergio Perez. However, Lawson was chosen to take the seat for the 2025 season. Now, Tsunoda is expected to serve as a reserve driver, being the first option should Verstappen or Lawson be unable to race. This development raises further doubts about Tsunoda's future within Red Bull's structure. With the end of the partnership with Honda, many wonder if the Japanese driver will be retained by the energy drink brand in the future. Recently, team principal Christian Horner mentioned that it wouldn't make sense to keep him if he had no chance to race for the main team. Andrea Kimi Antonelli will have big responsibilities in F1 as he replaces seven-time world champion Lewis Hamilton at Mercedes. But a social media post highlights the young age of the Italian. The 18-year-old prodigy posted a photo in a driving school car, celebrating getting his driver's license. Mission accomplished, the smiling driver celebrated. According to Motorsport, the F1 driver had no issues during the exam in San Marino, where he lives. He made one mistake in the theoretical test, but drove the Volkswagen Golf calmly during the practical part. Interestingly, Kimi Antonelli had already earned his FIA Super License, a special driver's license required for F1 drivers. The FIA awards points for titles and strong positions in lower racing series. To obtain the Super License, 40 points are required, and the driver exceeded the requirements by winning twice in the European Karting Championship, the Italian F4, ADAC Formula 4, and the European and Middle Eastern Formula Regional Championships, in addition to finishing sixth in the 2024 Formula 2 season. The precocity of the Italian was so remarkable that the FIA had to make an exception to allow him to participate in free practices and races in F1. The category's regulations stated that a competitor should be at least 18 years old and have a driver's license to participate. However, the rules were modified last year and a new clause was added. At the exclusive discretion of the FIA, a driver who has recently and consistently demonstrated exceptional ability and maturity in Formula car competitions may be granted a super license at the age of 17. As a result, Kimi Antonelli participated in the 2024 Italian GP free practice and even set the fastest time before crashing. Now, he will be the third youngest driver to race in F1 at 18 years, 6 months, and 19 days old, behind only Lance Stroll, who debuted at 18 years, 4 months, and 25 days, and four-time world champion Max Verstappen, 17 years, 5 months, and 13 days. Adrian Newey's departure, 25, will define the team's future in the title race. Yuki Tsunoda's position as a reserve driver at Red Bull raises questions about his future in F1. He had a strong 2024 season, but it wasn't enough to secure a main seat. The issue is that Tsunoda seems stuck in a gray area. Good enough for Racing Bulls, but not for the main team. With Honda's departure, a critical factor in his career, the pressure is mounting. Tsunoda will need to prove a lot in 2025 to convince Red Bull he's still worth betting on. Otherwise, it could spell the end of his F1 journey. Andrea Kimi Antonelli is undoubtedly one of the most promising talents in modern F1. Replacing Lewis Hamilton is a monumental task, but everything indicates that the young Italian is ready for the challenge. He has already shown maturity beyond his years, whether by winning major titles in junior categories or standing out in his first F1 tests. Mercedes is taking a big gamble, but it's one that makes sense. Antonelli has the potential to be the next big name for the team, especially in an era where rivalries among young talents like Piastri, Norris, and Leclerc are shaping F1's future. The key question will be how he handles the pressure. Transitioning from prospect to reality isn't always easy, but if anyone seems capable of doing it, it's Antonelli. The conclusion is, Formula One is in a fascinating moment of transition. Big names like Adrian Newey are reshaping the landscape. Teams like Ferrari are revamping their strategies, and new talents like Andrea Kimi Antonelli promise to shake up the grid. For fans, this only heightens the anticipation for what 2025 has in store. It's set to be a season of transformations, surprises, and above all, unforgettable races. Yuki Tsunoda is set to take on a dual role in the 2025 Formula One season. In addition to being one of the main drivers for Racing Bulls, the Japanese driver is expected to also assume the role of reserve driver for Red Bull, according to motorsport.com. The 24-year-old will compete in his fifth F1 season in 2025, all with Racing Bulls, formerly AlphaTauri and RB, Red Bull's junior team, where he was defeated in the battle for the seat alongside Max Verstappen by his former teammate Liam Lawson. Tsunoda had one of his best seasons in 2024, consistently scoring points and outperforming his teammates, Daniel Ricciardo and Lawson, putting him in the running for Red Bull's second seat, following the dismissal of Sergio Perez. However, he was ultimately overlooked in favor of New Zealand's Lawson, who will make his full-time debut in 2025. Now, Tsunoda is set to take on the reserve driver position, becoming the first option in case Verstappen or Lawson are unable to compete in a race. This development raises further questions about Tsunoda's future within Red Bull's structure. With the end of the partnership with Honda, many are wondering if the Japanese driver will be retained by the energy drink brand moving forward. Recently, team principal Christian Horner stated that it would not make sense to keep Tsunoda if he had no chance of racing for the main team. Yuki Tsunoda's dual role in the 2025 Formula One season presents both opportunities and challenges for his future at Red Bull. The Japanese driver will continue with Racing Bulls, the team formerly known as AlphaTauri, but in addition to his regular racing duties, Tsunoda will also serve as a reserve driver for Red Bull, stepping in if Max Verstappen or Liam Lawson are unavailable. Tsunoda had a strong 2024 season, consistently outperforming teammates Daniel Ricciardo and Liam Lawson, which led many to believe he could secure the second seat alongside Verstappen. However, despite his impressive performance, Tsunoda was ultimately passed over in favor of Lawson, who will make his full-time F1 debut in 2025. As a result, Tsunoda's role as reserve driver highlights his importance within the Red Bull family, but it also raises questions about his long-term future with the team. With Red Bull's partnership with Honda ending and Tsunoda's prospects of racing in the main team growing uncertain, it's clear that the Japanese driver faces a pivotal moment in his F1 career. As Red Bull team principal Christian Horner recently pointed out, it would be difficult for the team to retain Tsunoda if he has no chance of racing for the senior team in the future. It remains to be seen how Tsunoda will adapt to this new role, and whether he can leverage the reserve driver position into a chance to re-enter the main lineup in the coming seasons. There are increasing rumors about Max Verstappen potentially making a move from Red Bull to Aston Martin in the near future, despite the fact that the Dutch driver is under contract with Red Bull until the end of the 2028 Formula One season. According to Mark Hughes, an F1 journalist, the idea of Verstappen joining Aston Martin makes a lot of sense, especially considering the recent developments at the team. Aston Martin has been making strategic moves to position itself as a contender for Verstappen, including the recruitment of Adrian Newey and the securing of Honda engines for their car. These changes seem designed to attract Verstappen, who already has a strong relationship with Honda, having worked with them during his championship-winning years at Red Bull. In an interview on the Race podcast, Hughes stated that negotiations between Verstappen and Aston Martin are already taking place, with an agreement likely to be reached in the near future. He pointed out that Verstappen has been at Red Bull for 10 years, during which he has won several championships, with the first being the most significant to him. The others, Hughes suggests, are just trophies for Verstappen. The key factor here is Lawrence Stroll, the team owner of Aston Martin, who has worked to create a team with impressive talents and facilities. Stroll also brought Honda on board, knowing that Verstappen and Honda have a solid relationship. According to Hughes, this makes the move to Aston Martin a natural next step for both Verstappen and the team, giving credibility to the growing rumors. While Verstappen's future with Red Bull remains uncertain, this potential switch to Aston Martin shows just how ambitious the team has become in its pursuit of success, and how it's positioning itself to challenge the dominant forces in F1, with Verstappen as a central figure in that plan.